The moment the human warship appeared above the battle zone, the entire area seemed to freeze. For weeks, alien fleets had been circling, attacking, and retreating in a pattern that made no sense to outsiders. It was chaos, a region of space, where ships from many worlds clashed in a storm of light and fire. But no one expected Earth to send a ship into this mess. And now, hovering on the edge of orbit, the human warship shone like a beacon. The Eclipse Vanguard, as it was called, was enormous. Its hull was sleek, designed for speed as much as for power, and it glimmered with the quiet confidence of a machine built to survive anything. From the distant planets observing the scene, it looked almost fragile against the explosions and smoke of the ongoing battle. Yet something about it was different. There was a sense of purpose, a calm in its approach that none of the alien fleets had ever seen before. The warship was not drifting randomly or hiding. It was moving with a clear goal. Inside the ship, the crew was awake and alert. Every station was manned. The bridge was quiet, but not tense. There was a sense of readiness that came from deep training and years of experience. Outside, the battle raged on, but the humans moved with the feeling that they were stepping into a storm they were ready for. Every movement was precise. Every command followed instantly by action. They were not acting on fear or hope. They were acting on knowledge and determination. For the alien observers, it was unusual. They had never seen anything like this before. Most civilizations they had encountered in their travels either avoided danger or attacked in large, overwhelming numbers. But the humans moved forward when everyone else stepped back. They moved with a sense of certainty, as though the chaos around them was something they could tame. Ships from distant worlds whispered to one another through their communication channels, trying to understand why the humans were here. Some predicted that the human warship would be destroyed in minutes. Others dared to hope that perhaps Earth had weapons or strategies unlike any they had ever seen. The Eclipse Vanguard descended slowly into the battle zone. Its engines flared softly, not as a display of power but as a signal of control. Unlike other ships that sped into combat recklessly, it seemed to measure each moment, each movement. The alien fleets noticed this and, for the first time, began to hesitate. They could sense that the humans were not like the other races they had fought. There was no panic, no greed, no hesitation. There was only purpose. Inside the ship, the crew watched the alien formations on their screens. They were aware of the dangers. They knew that their mission could very well cost them their lives. But there was no fear. The humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Every eye on the bridge was fixed on the path ahead. Every hand was ready at the controls. The atmosphere was calm, yet electric, like the moment just before a storm breaks. The outer sensors began to pick up the movements of the enemy. Drones, warships, and other strange machines moved through the debris fields of destroyed fleets. The humans did not hesitate. They adjusted their trajectory to avoid the largest clusters of enemies while staying close enough to fulfill their mission. The aliens watched this silently. Many of their commanders had never felt this sense of calculated bravery. Most of them assumed that the humans would falter under pressure, yet the warship moved forward, slicing through space with precision and intent. The human commander, standing at the center of the bridge, was calm. Every decision had been planned, every possibility considered. He knew the risk, yet he also knew the importance of the mission. Earth had sent them not to conquer, not to intimidate, but to show that humanity could protect itself and those who could not defend themselves. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it did not slow them. It made them sharper, faster, and more determined. Every crew member understood that their actions here could change the course of this war, even if they did not survive to see it. As the warship descended further, the sounds of battle outside became louder. Explosions illuminated the void, and the flashes of weapons fire reflected off the hull of the Eclipse Vanguard. The aliens could see that this was no ordinary human ship. It was built for endurance, with layers of shielding that could take repeated hits and systems designed to adapt to every type of attack. But more than its design, it was the humans themselves that made the difference. They moved as one unit, anticipating each threat and responding with speed and intelligence. In the observation decks of allied planets and ships, everyone who could watch was staring. No one had sent a ship into the heart of this war zone for decades. Most believed it was suicide. Yet here was humanity, fearless and precise, entering a place where thousands of ships had been destroyed. There was a quiet admiration, even among the alien commanders, for what they saw. A single human warship was not just a ship, it was a statement. It was proof that humans were willing to take risks that others would not, that they were willing to step into chaos when others fled, and that they would stand in the face of destruction to protect what they believed in. The first few minutes in the battle zone were tense. The humans did not fire unless necessary. They observed, calculated, and moved with purpose. Their sensors detected enemy positions, weaknesses, and movements. Each action was deliberate. It was not the speed or power that impressed the alien fleets. It was the confidence and clarity of purpose. For centuries, they had relied on overwhelming force to achieve results. Humans relied on something different: courage, precision, and unity. The silence among the aliens was almost palpable. Many had expected panic, fear, or retreat. None came. They could not understand it, and in that moment, uncertainty spread through their ranks. They watched as the human warship continued to descend, becoming more than just a ship in space. It became a symbol of resolve, of fearlessness, and of the fact that humanity would not be ignored. The Eclipse Vanguard was not just entering a battle zone. It was rewriting the rules of engagement simply by existing there. Inside the human ship, the crew continued their work without distraction. They were fully aware that all eyes in the galaxy were on them. Each sensor sweep, each maneuver, and each communication was executed with care and precision. Even as alarms flashed for minor collisions with debris or the faint signals of distant enemy drones, no one panicked. There was a quiet focus, a steady rhythm that carried them forward through the chaos. The first hour in the battle zone passed with calculated caution. The human ship had avoided direct conflict for the moment, but its presence alone caused ripples across the enemy ranks. Aliens shifted formations, paused attacks, and hesitated in ways they had never done before. The humans were not yet fighting aggressively, but they were making their presence felt. Just by entering the zone, they had shifted the balance of power. For the human crew, this was only the beginning. They knew the real challenge lay ahead, where the strongest enemy forces waited and where the deadliest threats were hidden. But they also knew that fear had no place in their mission. Every crew member, from the youngest technician to the commanding officer, understood that they were part of something greater than themselves. Humanity's courage, strategy, and determination were on display, and failure was not an option, not because they believed themselves invincible, but because they refused to leave others to face danger alone. As the Eclipse Vanguard continued its descent, the alien fleets exchanged nervous communications. Many commanders were trying to understand why a human warship would act this way. Some speculated it was desperation. Others thought it was recklessness. But none could deny the impact it was having. A single ship had managed to disrupt the strategies of countless fleets. A single crew had managed to instill doubt where confidence had once ruled. And so the human warship moved deeper into the battle zone. The explosions, the flashes of laser fire, and the debris fields stretched out before them. But they did not falter. Every eye on the bridge was focused, every hand ready, every mind sharp. Humanity had entered the battlefield not as a spectator, not as a follower, but as a force that would be remembered. The Eclipse Vanguard was not just a ship. It was the beginning of a story that would echo across galaxies. A story of courage, determination, and the unyielding spirit of humans in the face of chaos and war. The moment had arrived when humans would prove themselves, not through numbers, not through intimidation, but through bravery, unity, and purpose. And as the warship descended further, It became clear to everyone watching that this was more than a mission. This was a declaration. Humanity was here, and they were ready to face whatever the universe could throw at them. The human warship continued its descent into the battle zone, moving with a calm determination that unsettled everyone who watched. From nearby planets and distant fleets, observers had been sending warnings. Their messages crackled across the communication channels full of concern, disbelief, and even anger. "Do not enter that area," they said. "It is a trap. You will be destroyed." But the humans did not reply. They did not hesitate. They kept moving forward, steady and unwavering, as if the warnings themselves were a distant echo that did not concern them. The battle zone had been chaotic for years. Entire fleets had been destroyed, and no one could hold territory for long. The debris of ships burned out and broken, floated like silent monuments to failed campaigns. Drones and automated weapons still patrolled some areas, attacking anything that came close. The aliens had grown used to fear, suspicion, and chaos. They believed that only the most reckless or desperate would dare enter this place without overwhelming force. And yet here were the humans, entering a zone that even seasoned commanders avoided. Inside the human warship, the atmosphere was quiet but intense. Every crew member knew the risks, and yet there was no panic. The bridge hummed with focus. Sensors scanned the region constantly, detecting threats hidden in asteroid clusters around broken ships, and in the shadows of the explosions still echoing across the zone. Every warning was calculated, every movement deliberate. The humans did not need to rely on panic or brute force. They relied on preparation, skill, and a unity that had been built over countless missions. The human commander, standing at the center of the bridge, did not flinch at the warnings. He knew what had been lost here before, and he knew what might happen to his crew. But he also knew that hesitation could cost even more lives. The mission was clear. Move into the zone, protect the weaker fleets trapped in the chaos, and demonstrate that humanity would not abandon those in need. Fear might be natural, but action despite fear, that was what separated humans from every other species the aliens had encountered. Across the battle zone, alien fleets began to notice something strange. Humans were not attacking indiscriminately. They were not showing fear, but neither were they moving recklessly. Instead, every action was measured, every movement precise. The humans were carefully assessing threats, navigating debris, and positioning themselves in a way that gave them the greatest advantage without unnecessary risk. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Most civilizations relied on overwhelming power or numerical superiority. Humans relied on something else: intelligence, strategy, and courage combined. As the human ship moved further into the chaos, the aliens tried to communicate with them again. Messages were sent, demanding explanations, warning them to retreat, or even threatening them outright. The human crew did not respond, not because they were arrogant, but because they had no reason to. They understood the risks and they understood the mission. Words would not protect anyone. Actions would. Every second spent responding to warnings would be a second wasted, and in this zone, seconds could mean life or death. Inside the Eclipse Vanguard, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. Technicians monitored the ship's systems, adjusting power to shields, engines, and weapons as the situation demanded. The youngest crew members moved with confidence, following routines they had drilled countless times. Even in the presence of danger, there was a calm that only came from preparation and trust. The humans trusted each other completely. Every eye on the bridge could anticipate the next move. Every hand knew its role. And together they moved as one, a single unit, capable of extraordinary focus under pressure. The aliens could not help but watch in growing awe. For centuries they had studied and fought against other species. They had learned to expect fear, hesitation, and mistakes. Humans, however, seemed to defy all expectations. They were not reckless, but they were bold. They did not retreat in the face of danger, but neither did they act without thought. Every maneuver, every adjustment, every decision reflected a species that had learned to survive not through numbers alone, but through intelligence, resilience, and courage. In the IR, observation decks of Allied fleets, whispers spread quickly. "They are moving like they own the zone," one commander said. "Do you think they will survive?" asked another. But most did not speak aloud. They watched in silent fascination as the human warship continued its descent. It was not just a ship. It was a statement, a challenge, and a warning all at once. Humans had entered a place where no one dared to go, and their calm confidence was unsettling even to the strongest commanders. The human crew encountered their first serious obstacle an hour into the mission. A cluster of drones, old and dangerous, swarmed out of a debris field. They had been programmed to attack anything alive, anything that moved. For a moment, the crew prepared for combat, but the engagement was controlled, precise. Lasers lit up the void in short bursts, and the drones were destroyed before they could reach the hull. Damage was minimal, and the ship continued its path without hesitation. For the humans, it was a test, not a surprise. For the aliens, it was a revelation. Even when faced with threats, the humans maintained calm. They did not panic. They did not rush. They calculated, aimed, and executed. Each action was efficient, saving energy and resources while neutralizing danger. The aliens could not understand this. Most species relied on panic or overwhelming force when threatened. Humans relied on focus and training. That difference, small in appearance, made all the difference in survival. As the warship moved deeper, the humans also began to assist the fleets trapped in the chaos. Some ships were damaged, drifting helplessly. The humans coordinated rescue maneuvers, positioning the warship to shield vulnerable ships while their crew worked to stabilize or tow them to safer areas. The aliens watched in disbelief. Not only were humans fearless, but they also risked themselves to protect others. In a place ruled by selfish survival, this was unheard of. Humanity's bravery was not just in facing danger. It was in facing danger for the sake of others. Time passed, and the Eclipse vanguard advanced further. The humans had not yet engaged the main enemy forces, but the impact of their presence was already clear. Alien fleets that had been aggressive moments ago now held back, unsure how to respond. Even commanders who had faced countless battles were unsure what to make of the humans. This was not a show of power in the conventional sense. This was a show of spirit, courage, and unity. And the aliens were beginning to realize that spirit could be as powerful as weapons, if not more. On the human bridge, the crew remained focused. They did not let the admiration or attention of others distract them. Every sensor sweep, every adjustment, every maneuver was about survival, strategy, and the mission. They knew that every second mattered. Every decision had consequences. And every member of the crew understood that their actions could inspire others, change the outcome of battles, and even alter the course of the war. Hours passed, and the human warship had moved farther than anyone expected. It was no longer just a ship entering a battle zone. It had become a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of hope for the trapped fleets and a puzzle to the alien commanders. They could not predict the humans' next move. They could not force them into mistakes. And most importantly, they could not intimidate them. The human commander gave one final order for the day: maintain position, monitor threats, and prepare for any eventuality. The crew followed without question. There was no debate, no hesitation. They understood the importance of discipline and focus, and as the warship settled into a temporary position in the zone, the humans remained ready, calm, and fully aware of the dangers that surrounded them. By the end of the first day, the human presence had shifted the dynamics of the entire battle zone. Ships that had been on the verge of destruction were now being protected. Enemy fleets were unsure how to proceed, and humans, without firing indiscriminately or rushing recklessly, had made their mark. Their strategy, courage, and unity were being observed, studied, and in some cases respected across the galaxies. In quiet moments, the humans looked out into the void. They saw the destruction, the remnants of failed campaigns, and the chaos that others had fled. Yet they also saw hope. Hope that their presence could change the tide, that their courage could inspire, and that their actions could save lives. They knew the risks, they knew the potential cost, but they also knew that courage was necessary. To act despite fear, to stand when others would flee, that was the essence of humanity. And so, as the first day in the battle zone ended, the humans prepared for what was to come. They did not know every danger that awaited them, but they knew that their actions mattered. They knew that each choice, each maneuver, each act of courage could ripple through the war, affecting countless lives. And with that knowledge, they rested only enough to remain ready. For humanity, survival was not just about strength. It was about courage, unity, and the determination to stand in the face of the impossible. The human warship had now moved deeper into the battle zone, where debris from destroyed fleets floated like ghostly reminders of past conflicts. The void was filled with twisted metal, broken weaponry, and the silent husks of ships that had once been full of life. From a distance, the scene looked like a graveyard, quiet and haunting. But for the humans aboard the Eclipse Vanguard, this was only the beginning. They were fully aware that the dangers lurking here were more than just visible. Hidden threats could strike at any moment, and they had to be ready for anything. The sensors on the warship began to pick up unusual readings. Small blips appeared, moving silently among the debris. At first, they seemed random, but soon patterns emerged. The humans realized that these were not ordinary ships or drones. They were remnants of an ancient, forgotten civilization, machines that had survived countless wars, programmed to attack anything that moved in this region of space. The humans had no history with these machines, no knowledge of their capabilities, and no idea how many were out there. All they knew was that they were dangerous and that the Eclipse Vanguard had to face them head-on. The human commander gave a single, clear order: hold the line. He did not panic, and neither did the crew. Every station on the ship came alive. Weapon systems powered up, shields strengthened, and engines adjusted for rapid maneuvering. The humans moved as a single coordinated unit. The young crew members, trained for years, followed routines they had drilled countless times. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion. Each crew member knew their role, and each role was critical to the survival of the ship. As the first wave of enemy drones emerged from the debris, the humans reacted with precision. Lasers cut through the void in quick, controlled bursts, destroying the drones before they could reach the hull. Missiles were launched with pinpoint accuracy, taking out clusters of attackers in a single strike. The humans did not fire recklessly. They conserved their energy and resources, using every shot strategically. Even as the drones adapted and changed formation, the crew remained calm, adjusting their tactics seamlessly. The alien observers were stunned. They had expected fear, chaos, and mistakes. Instead, they saw humans operating with unmatched coordination and efficiency. The humans were not relying on overwhelming numbers or brute force. They were relying on intelligence, teamwork, and courage. Every move was calculated, every response measured, and every second they gained an advantage over enemies that had seemed invincible. Inside the Eclipse Vanguard, the crew felt the tension, but it was a controlled tension. They understood the danger, and they respected it. Fear existed, but it was channeled into focus. Every warning light, every alarm, and every sensor reading was met with immediate action. Engineers rerouted power to shields when minor impacts occurred. Technicians adjusted weapon targeting when the drones changed their approach. Pilots maneuvered the ship through tight clusters of debris, avoiding collisions while maintaining optimal positions for defense. It was a symphony of precision, and the humans conducted it with calm determination. As the battle continued, the drones grew more aggressive. Some attempted to swarm from multiple directions while others used stealth to approach unseen. The humans did not falter. They adapted in real time. Their sensors detected even the smallest movements, and their responses were swift and decisive. When one drone broke through the first line of defense, a laser turret was already tracking it, firing with calculated timing to neutralize the threat before it could reach the hull. Every crew member knew that their actions could mean the difference between survival and destruction. Outside the ship, The void seemed alive with light and movement. Explosions lit up the darkness as drones collided with shields and weapons fire. Debris spun slowly, reflecting the glow of lasers and missiles. The human warship was at the center of it all, moving steadily through the chaos. It was a difficult and dangerous environment, yet the humans did not panic. They moved with purpose, always aware of the threats around them, always prepared for the next attack. The alien fleets watching were beginning to understand that humans were different from any species they had encountered. Most species relied on fear, aggression, or overwhelming numbers to survive. Humans relied on something else: courage, intelligence, and unity. They were not reckless, but they were bold. They were not unpredictable, but they were adaptable. And most importantly, they were not afraid to face danger head-on. This realization began to spread through the ranks of the aliens, creating doubt and uncertainty. Inside the warship, the humans also began to take the initiative. They did not wait for the enemy to strike. They scanned the debris fields, predicted the movements of the drones, and struck first when necessary. Each attack was calculated to minimize risk while maximizing effectiveness. They targeted the drones that posed the greatest threat first, ensuring that the ship remained safe while still making progress through the battle zone. It was a delicate balance, and the humans maintained it flawlessly. Despite the intensity of the battle, the humans also remained aware of the bigger picture. Their mission was not just survival. It was to protect other fleets trapped in the chaos, to ensure that the war zone did not claim more lives than necessary. When they detected a small, damaged ship drifting helplessly, they adjusted their course to intercept it. Shields extended to protect the weaker vessel, and tractor beams guided it to safety. The humans understood that courage was not only in facing enemies, but also in protecting those who could not protect themselves. Time passed, and the battle showed no signs of letting up. The drones kept coming, and new threats emerged from the shadows of broken fleets. Yet the humans remained steady. They did not panic, they did not retreat, and they did not waste energy on unnecessary actions. Every decision was focused on survival, protection, and progress. They moved as one, a single unit capable of extraordinary focus under pressure. The human commander issued updates calmly, giving clear, concise orders. Adjust shields to Quadrant 3. Target the drones approaching from the south. Prepare the energy cannons for long-range interception. Each instruction was followed immediately. There was no confusion, no hesitation. The crew trusted each other completely, and that trust allowed them to act faster and more effectively than any single individual could. As the hours passed, the humans began to push the drones back. They cleared paths through the debris fields, allowing trapped fleets to move to safer zones. The alien observers were astonished. A single human warship, facing unknown enemies and navigating a deadly battlefield, was not only surviving, it was making a difference. The humans were proving that courage, skill, and unity could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. In quieter moments, the crew took stock of their progress. They repaired minor damages, adjusted systems, and checked supplies. There was no celebration, only focus. They knew that the battle was far from over, and that more dangerous threats awaited them deeper in the zone. Yet they also knew that they were making an impact, that their presence was changing the course of events, and that their actions were a statement to the galaxy about the strength and determination of humanity. As the battle raged on, the humans also began to anticipate the patterns of the drones. They noticed that some drones moved in predictable loops, while others attacked in synchronized waves. Using this knowledge, they adjusted their strategies. Lasers were fired in precise sequences, shields rotated to absorb attacks, and the ship moved through the chaos like a blade cutting through smoke. Every maneuver was calculated, every action intentional. The alien fleets continued to watch in awe. They had never seen anything like this before. Most species would have been overwhelmed, panicked, or destroyed by the intensity of the situation. Humans were neither overwhelmed nor panicked. They were calm, focused, and effective. Their courage and skill were rewriting the expectations of what a single ship could accomplish in such a dangerous zone. By the end of the day, The humans had cleared a significant portion of the battle zone. Drones had been destroyed, trapped ships had been rescued, and the warship remained intact despite the constant attacks. The aliens were forced to reassess their assumptions about humans. They had expected recklessness, fear, and mistakes. Instead, they found precision, courage, and an unwavering will to succeed. Inside the warship, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of rest. Sensors remained active, shields held strong, and weapons were ready. Even in these moments, the humans remained alert. They knew that the battle was far from over, and that even a single mistake could be deadly. Yet there was a quiet pride among them. They had faced the unknown, fought enemies no one had understood, and had survived. Their actions had proven that humanity was more than just another species. It was a force that could endure, adapt, and inspire. As the human warship prepared for the next phase of its mission, it became clear to everyone watching that this was not just a fight for survival. It was a demonstration of what humans were capable of: courage under pressure, intelligence in chaos, and unity in the face of danger. The Eclipse Vanguard had not only entered the battle zone, it had begun to change it. And in doing so, it had shown the galaxy that humans were a force to be reckoned with, a species that could face the impossible. The human warship moved deeper into the heart of the battle zone, where chaos had reached its peak. Explosions lit the void in unpredictable flashes, debris from destroyed fleets drifted like deadly clouds, and alien ships moved in frantic patterns, trying to gain an advantage. For centuries, this place had been considered untouchable, a zone where even the strongest fleets feared to tread. But the humans had no fear. They had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Every crew member aboard the Eclipse Vanguard understood that lesson, and they were ready to prove it. The moment they reached the densest part of the conflict, the true scale of the enemy forces became clear. Ships of every size, shape, and function surrounded them, some sleek and fast, others massive and heavily armed. Drones swarmed from every angle, moving like a living storm. Sensors on the human ship registered thousands of threats at once, and the crew did not flinch. They had been trained for this, drilled to respond under extreme pressure, and united in purpose. Each human knew that hesitation could cost lives, but action, calculated and precise, could save them. The human commander gave clear, concise orders: shields at full capacity, prioritize the drones approaching from the east, keep defensive lasers ready on all quadrants, prepare for long-range fire if necessary. Every command was followed instantly. There was no confusion, no wasted motion. The humans moved as one, a single organism of skill and determination. In the midst of chaos, they were calm, coordinated, and effective. The alien observers watched with growing unease. They had faced countless opponents in their history, but none like this. Humans were not just surviving the storm, they were reshaping it. Their movements were precise, their responses swift, and their courage unshakable. Every drone destroyed, every threat neutralized, was a lesson to the galaxy. Humans did not follow predictable patterns. They adapted, learned, and struck with intelligence, not just firepower. The first real attack came from a coordinated wave of enemy ships, moving in formation like a single massive predator. The humans did not retreat. Instead, they adjusted their shields, calculated trajectories, and fired with controlled bursts, taking out the ships that posed the greatest threat first. Each action was deliberate. Each shot was aimed not just to destroy, but to protect the fragile ships trapped behind them. The Eclipse Vanguard became a moving shield, a wall that held back the tide of destruction while minimizing damage to themselves and allies. Inside the ship, the crew worked like a single focused machine. Engineers monitored the energy flow, diverting power to shields and weapons as needed. Pilots maneuvered with skill, avoiding debris and enemy fire while keeping the ship in an optimal position. Technicians adjusted targeting systems and weapons, calibration in real time. Every crew member knew that their actions mattered. They were not just fighting for survival. They were defending those who could not defend themselves, and every choice had consequences for the lives of countless others. As the battle continued, the humans began to understand the patterns of their enemies. Drones and ships moved in synchronized attacks, but humans adapted, predicting their next moves. When one group attempted to flank the Eclipse vanguard, the crew anticipated it and fired preemptively, neutralizing the threat before it became dangerous. The aliens watching could not believe it. They had expected humans to panic, to make mistakes, to be overwhelmed by the numbers. But humans were proving that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even overwhelming odds. The human commander made another decision that would shock the enemy. Instead of waiting for the assault to hit them fully, he ordered the ship forward, cutting through the enemy formation with precision. Lasers and missiles tore paths through the drones, while shields absorbed the unavoidable impacts. The humans were no longer just defending, they were taking control of the battlefield. Every movement was calculated, every action deliberate, and the enemy found themselves reacting to humans for the first time. Throughout the ship, the crew maintained a steady focus. There was tension, yes, but it was controlled, channeled into skillful execution. Fear was present, but transformed into clarity and courage. Every minor alarm, every flashing sensor, every threat was met with calm, decisive action. The human crew moved like a single organism, their unity and discipline allowing them to survive situations that would have destroyed lesser fleets. Even in the middle of the chaos, the humans did not forget their mission. They began coordinating with other trapped ships, providing cover and guidance through dangerous zones. Some ships had been damaged and were drifting helplessly. The Eclipse vanguard positioned itself between these vulnerable vessels and the enemy, acting as a living shield. Tractor beams and careful maneuvers guided the weaker ships toward safety, demonstrating that humanity's courage was not selfish, it was protective. The alien fleets were increasingly unsettled. They had never encountered an opponent who combined intelligence, courage, and compassion in battle. Most species relied on fear or aggression to survive. Humans relied on all three: courage to face danger, intelligence to adapt, and compassion to protect others. It was a combination they could not easily counter. As the humans moved forward, they inspired admiration, fear, and uncertainty all at once. As hours passed, the humans held their ground against attacks that would have destroyed ordinary fleets. Each wave of drones or enemy ships was met with precise fire, careful maneuvers, and relentless determination. Even when minor systems were damaged, repairs were made on the fly. Energy was rerouted, weapons recalibrated, and shields adjusted, all without hesitation. The crew had learned to trust themselves and each other completely, and that trust allowed them to act faster and more effectively than any one individual could. The humans also began to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's formation. By observing patterns, they were able to target key drones and ships, disrupting coordinated attacks. Their actions were not reckless, they were strategic. Every strike was measured, every maneuver intentional. Even the smallest crew member, operating a single weapon system, knew that their contribution could change the outcome of the battle. As the day went on, the human warship became more than a single ship in a deadly zone. It became a symbol, a rallying point for trapped fleets and a puzzle for the enemy. Humans were not just surviving, they were shaping the battlefield. The aliens could not predict their next move, could not intimidate them, and could not easily stop them. Courage, intelligence, and unity were proving more powerful than sheer numbers. Inside the Eclipse vanguard, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment to acknowledge their progress. Systems were checked, minor repairs completed, and weapons recalibrated. There was no celebration, there was no time for it, but there was a quiet sense of accomplishment. They had held the line, protected vulnerable ships, and survived attacks that would have destroyed almost anyone else. And they knew this was only the beginning. The human commander looked out at the chaos, aware of the challenges still ahead. He knew that more dangerous threats awaited in the deeper zones, that the enemy would not relent, and that every second could bring new dangers. But he also knew the strength of his crew, the skill of his team, and the courage that had brought them this far. They were not invincible, but they were determined. And determination combined with skill and courage could achieve extraordinary things. As the battle continued, the humans pushed forward, taking the fight to the enemy while protecting those who could not defend themselves. Lasers cut through swarms of drones, missiles destroyed larger ships, and the Eclipse Vanguard moved like a living shield, absorbing impacts while striking back with precision. Every crew member played a vital role, and together they formed a force that was greater than the sum of its parts. The alien fleets, once confident in their superiority, now hesitated. They had underestimated humans, assuming fear or chaos would dominate them. But they had misjudged the essence of humanity: courage, unity, and intelligence under pressure. The humans were not just surviving. They were standing as a testament to what a single, determined species could achieve, even in the most dangerous circumstances. By the end of the day, the humans had not only held their ground, they had begun to change the dynamics of the battle. Enemy formations were disrupted. Vulnerable ships were protected, and the human warship remained fully operational despite constant attacks. They had proven that courage and unity could overcome even overwhelming odds. And while the battle was far from over, the humans had already made a mark that would be remembered across the galaxies. Even as the crew prepared for the next phase of combat, there was a quiet understanding among them. They were not fighting for glory or recognition. They were fighting for survival, for the protection of others, and to demonstrate that humanity would not yield to chaos or fear. And in that determination, they were unstoppable. The human warship had been in the heart of the battle zone for hours, and the intensity was growing. Explosions lit the void like stars gone rogue, debris floated unpredictably, and the distant flashes of energy weapons reflected off the twisted hulls of destroyed ships. The enemy had realized that the humans were not just surviving. They were a force that could not be ignored. Now a massive coordinated attack was forming, one that could overwhelm almost any other fleet. The crew of the Eclipse Vanguard knew that this was the moment when courage would be tested to its limits. The sensors lit up with thousands of approaching enemy signatures. The drones were relentless, swarming in waves, while larger enemy ships moved with deadly precision, ready to strike. The humans did not hesitate. The commander issued calm, clear orders, and the crew responded instantly. Shields maximum. Weapons at full readiness. Prioritize the south quadrant. Monitor debris. Fields for hidden threats. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Each command was executed without question, with every crew member moving in perfect synchrony. The first wave hit, and the ship shuddered under the impact. Lasers cut through the void, missiles streaked across space, and the shields absorbed repeated blows. The crew worked tirelessly, adjusting power to critical systems, recalibrating weapons, and patching minor hull breaches. Despite the violence around them, their focus remained unwavering. They had trained for this. They had anticipated chaos, and they were ready to meet it head-on. The aliens watching could hardly believe what they were seeing. Most species would have panicked, scattered, or succumbed to fear in such circumstances. Humans did none of these. Their actions were precise, deliberate, and unflinching. Even as enemy ships closed in from multiple angles, the Eclipse Vanguard maintained its composure, cutting through waves of attackers with a combination of strategy, speed, and firepower. Courage and intelligence were guiding every move, not recklessness. Inside the ship, the crew coordinated seamlessly. Pilots maneuvered through debris and enemy fire, dodging attacks with controlled precision. Engineers rerouted energy to shields when impacts threatened the hull, while weapons officers focused on targeting the most dangerous threats first. Even the youngest crew members followed their roles with confidence, understanding that every action mattered. The human crew was not just a team. They were a single organism operating with instinct, training, and trust. As the battle raged on, the enemy intensified their attacks. Swarms of drones attempted to surround the warship, while larger ships fired barrages of energy that could have torn through ordinary vessels. The humans adapted in real time. They anticipated enemy movements, countered flanking maneuvers, and used the environment, the debris, the wrecks, the void itself to their advantage. Every strike was calculated. every evasive action precise. They were not just fighting to survive. They were shaping the battlefield. The human commander made a critical decision. Rather than waiting for the enemy to press their advantage, he ordered the ship forward into the densest part of the swarm. This move was bold, almost reckless to outsiders, but the crew understood its purpose. By advancing, they disrupted enemy formations, broke the momentum of coordinated attacks, and created opportunities to protect weaker ships trapped behind them. The Eclipse vanguard became both shield and spear, holding back destruction while striking strategically to weaken the enemy. Throughout the ship, the crew maintained a calm focus despite the danger. Sensors flashed warnings, alarms blared, and the ship shook under repeated impacts. Yet no one panicked. Fear was present, but it was transformed into clarity and action. Each crew member knew their responsibilities, trusted their colleagues, and executed their roles with precision. Their courage was quiet but powerful, a force that guided the ship through the most intense moments of the battle. The enemy grew frustrated. Their attacks, once overwhelming, were now being countered with intelligence and coordination. They had underestimated humans, assuming fear would dominate and that chaos would weaken them. But humans were proving otherwise. They were not invincible, but they were relentless. Every wave of attacks they faced was met with strategic responses that minimized damage while maximizing impact. They had become more than a single ship. They were a symbol of human determination, courage, and unity. Hours passed, and the battle reached its climax. Enemy forces attempted to encircle the Eclipse vanguard, concentrating fire from all directions. The shields strained under the pressure, energy levels dropped, and minor damage began to accumulate. The crew worked tirelessly to manage the systems, but the intensity of the attack was overwhelming. It was clear that the ship could not survive indefinitely under such assault. The commander made a decision that would define this moment. The ship would hold its position regardless of the cost. Retreat was not an option. Humanity's courage would be demonstrated fully, here and now. A critical moment arrived when a massive enemy ship, heavily armored and armed with devastating weapons, closed in on the human warship. The energy cannons of the enemy fired in rapid succession, each shot capable of breaching the shields. The Eclipse vanguard shuddered with each impact, but the crew remained focused. Lasers and missiles targeted the enemy's weak points, exploiting every flaw in its design. The humans fought with skill, determination, and unwavering courage. Each crew member understood the stakes. Failure could mean destruction, but action could change the outcome of the battle for many others. As the hours continued, the humans maintained their stand. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and facing weapons far more powerful than most could endure. Yet they did not falter. Shields held, weapons fired with precision, and the ship moved with a grace that belied the chaos around it. Even when the energy reserves began to dwindle, the crew adapted, rationing power, prioritizing essential systems, and preparing for the worst. Their unity and discipline allowed them to operate at peak efficiency under conditions that would have broken any other fleet. In the midst of the battle, the humans also focused on protecting the weaker ships. Damaged vessels, drifting aimlessly and defenseless, were shielded by the Eclipse vanguard. Tractor beams guided them out of danger, and the human ship acted as a barrier between destruction and survival. It was not just a fight for themselves. It was a fight for all who could not defend themselves. Courage, intelligence, and selflessness combined to create a force that the enemy could not anticipate or easily counter. The climax of the battle approached as the enemy concentrated their forces for a final assault. The human commander realized that the ship could not withstand unlimited firepower indefinitely. Every system had been pushed to the limit. Shields were near capacity, weapons were overheating, and the hull had sustained multiple impacts. Yet, the crew remained calm, resolute, and fully aware of their mission. Humanity's courage would be shown no matter the cost. In a decisive maneuver, the commander ordered the ship to overcharge its main reactor. It was a risky, almost suicidal move, but it would release a massive surge of energy capable of destroying swarms of enemy ships in a single strike. The crew executed the order with precision. Alarms blared as energy built to critical levels. The ship vibrated under the strain, and every crew member braced themselves for the explosion that was coming. The final surge lit up the battle zone like a star-gone nova. Enemy swarms were obliterated, larger ships were critically damaged, and the chaos that had dominated the region for centuries finally began to quiet. The Eclipse Vanguard had given everything. The crew had pushed the ship to its limits and beyond. The explosion was blinding, consuming both the enemies around and parts of the ship itself. It was the ultimate act of courage and sacrifice, a demonstration of humanity's willingness to face impossible odds to protect others and make a difference. When the light faded, fragments of the ship and the surrounding debris floated in silence. The battle zone was still, almost eerily quiet. The enemy, who had once been confident in their overwhelming numbers and firepower, now observed the destruction with awe, fear, and respect. A single human warship, facing insurmountable odds, had changed the course of the battle, protecting countless lives and demonstrating courage that would be remembered for generations. Even in its final moments, the humans had acted with precision, intelligence, and selflessness. They had faced impossible odds, adapted to every challenge, and protected those who could not protect themselves. The Eclipse Vanguard had become more than a ship. It had become a symbol of human courage, resilience, and unity. The galaxy would remember this day, not for the destruction, but for the bravery and spirit of a species willing to stand in the face of overwhelming danger. Though the warship had been lost, the legacy of its crew lived on. Alien fleets, once confident in their supremacy, now respected humanity in a way they never had before. Other fleets that had been trapped or vulnerable were now safe, and the story of the human warship's courage spread across the galaxy. It was proof that even in the darkest moments, courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome almost any challenge. After the climax of the battle, the void of space seemed quieter, almost peaceful, yet it was a silence filled with the echoes of what had occurred. The human warship had pushed through impossible odds, surviving attacks that would have destroyed almost any other vessel. The enemy forces had been scattered, their formations broken, and their confidence shaken. For the first time in this chaotic region, the balance of power had shifted and the humans had made their mark. Inside the Eclipse Vanguard, the crew moved carefully through the aftermath. Systems were damaged but functional, and minor fires and electrical malfunctions were already being controlled. Engineers worked tirelessly, repairing critical systems while keeping the ship operational. The crew had been through hours of relentless combat, yet there was no panic. Every action was deliberate, precise, and essential. They were aware that survival depended on discipline, skill, and trust in each other. Every crew member played a vital role, and the coordination they had developed over years of training allowed them to operate as one unit. The human commander surveyed the scene from the bridge. He looked at the scattered remains of enemy drones and ships, the debris of long-forgotten fleets, and the smaller vessels that had been saved from destruction. A quiet pride filled him, not in glory or recognition, but in the knowledge that the crew had protected countless lives. They had faced an overwhelming threat with courage and intelligence, and they had survived. They had also given hope to the fleets that had been trapped and defenseless. Humanity had proven that it could act when others would hesitate, that it could stand firm when others would retreat. Beyond the immediate battle, the humans understood the wider impact of their actions. News of the Eclipse Vanguard's courage and effectiveness would spread quickly through the galaxy. Commanders who had underestimated humanity would now think twice before engaging them. Other species would learn that humans were not reckless or unpredictable, but courageous, disciplined, and capable of extraordinary unity. Even in defeat, the humans had left an example of strength, strategy, and determination that would shape future encounters. While the crew worked to stabilize the ship, they also tended to the smaller vessels that had survived the battle. Many had suffered heavy damage and were drifting aimlessly, their crews exhausted and fearful. The humans extended shields, used tractor beams to guide them to safer zones, and provided instructions on how to repair critical systems. In these moments, courage was not only about facing enemies, It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. The humans had demonstrated that bravery included compassion, responsibility, and foresight. The aliens who had once observed the battle with confidence now regarded humanity with a mixture of awe and respect. They had assumed that fear and numbers would determine the outcome, yet humans had defied every expectation. They had shown that intelligence, strategy, and unwavering courage could overcome even overwhelming odds. The Eclipse Vanguard's actions had not only saved lives but had also challenged assumptions about what it meant to be a powerful species. Humans were proving that strength was not measured by size, firepower, or fleets alone. It was measured by the courage to act decisively, the intelligence to adapt, and the unity to work as one. For the crew aboard the warship, there was little time to reflect on glory. The battle was over for now, but the dangers of the universe were endless. They continued to monitor the zone, scanning for lingering threats and ensuring that trapped ships were safe. Repairs were ongoing, and every crew member understood that readiness was essential. The quiet moments allowed them to take stock, review their actions, and prepare for the challenges still to come. Despite fatigue and the damage sustained, the crew remained focused. Survival in space was not only about skill in battle. It was about vigilance, preparation, and the ability to adapt continuously. The human commander held a brief meeting with his senior officers. They discussed what had happened, the decisions made during the battle, and the lessons learned. Each officer contributed observations and suggestions, not to assign blame but to refine their strategies for the future. This collaboration and open communication were a hallmark of human efficiency and unity. Every voice mattered, every perspective was valued, and every decision was informed by experience and knowledge. Even in the aftermath of chaos, humans operated with clarity and purpose. As they began to chart a course out of the battle zone, the crew reflected on the symbolic importance of their actions. The galaxy had witnessed humans standing against impossible odds, acting with courage and intelligence while protecting others. The Eclipse Vanguard had not only survived, it had inspired hope and respect. It was proof that even in the darkest and most dangerous corners of the universe, a species committed to unity, strategy, and bravery could make a difference. Humans had shown that courage was contagious, that one determined group could influence countless others, and that intelligence and compassion were as powerful as any weapon. The aliens who had witnessed the battle would carry new stories back to their own civilizations. Stories of humans who moved with calm precision through chaos, who faced threats without fear, and who protected those who could not protect themselves. Stories of a species that valued courage and intelligence over recklessness, unity over individualism, and action over hesitation. In countless systems, these stories would change the way humans were perceived. They would no longer be underestimated, dismissed, or feared simply as unpredictable. They would be respected, and in some cases, even admired. Meanwhile, the human crew continued their work with quiet determination. Debris was cleared, damaged systems repaired, and supplies reorganized. Communications were sent to allied fleets, sharing information about safe routes, enemy positions, and the status of rescued ships. Humans did not act for recognition. They acted because it was necessary, because survival and protection of others required action, and because courage was a defining trait of their species. Even after the battle, their focus remained on responsibility, not reward. The Eclipse Vanguard slowly emerged from the battle zone, its hull battered but intact, its crew alive and resolute. The silence of the void seemed almost comforting after hours of relentless chaos. The stars, once obscured by explosions and energy blasts, now shone clearly. It was a moment of calm, a chance for reflection and preparation. The humans knew that their mission was far from over. Other dangers awaited, other conflicts would arise, and other challenges would test their skills and courage. Yet they also knew that they had proven something vital. Humans could face the impossible, stand firm and protect others, no matter the cost. The commander looked at his crew, seeing exhaustion, determination, and pride reflected in their eyes. They had endured what few could survive, acted with precision under pressure, and achieved what many had thought impossible. For a brief moment, words were unnecessary. The actions of the crew spoke louder than any report, any commendation, or any recognition. They had made history, not for glory but for courage, intelligence, and unity. Across the galaxy, the story of the human warship's stand began to spread. Fleet commanders, scholars, and even ordinary citizens learned of the courage displayed in the battle zone. Humans were no longer seen as a single fleet among many. They were a symbol of resilience, strategy, and bravery. The Eclipse Vanguard's mission had not only protected lives but had also changed the perception of humanity itself. Across countless worlds, there would now be hope inspired by courage, proof that determination and intelligence could overcome overwhelming odds. As the human warship moved further from the battle zone, the crew continued to repair, refuel, and prepare for the missions ahead. The immediate danger had passed, but the universe remained unpredictable. Humans understood that survival was not about avoiding challenges, it was about meeting them with skill, courage, and unity. The lessons learned in this battle would guide them in future conflicts, making them stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever lay ahead. The legacy of the Eclipse Vanguard was clear. It was not just a story of survival, it was a story of courage, intelligence, and unity. It was a reminder that even in the darkest, most dangerous places, humans could act decisively, protect others, and make a difference. The warship had faced overwhelming odds, adapted to every challenge, and emerged with its mission accomplished. And in doing so, it had proven that courage, skill, and determination were as powerful as any weapon. Even in the quiet aftermath, the human spirit continued to shine. The crew, battered but unbroken, had faced chaos and emerged victorious. Their actions had inspired hope, changed perceptions, and demonstrated what it meant to be human in the vast, dangerous expanse of space. Courage, unity, and intelligence were not just traits, they were defining elements of their species, and they had been displayed in their fullest measure during this mission. The human warship, moving steadily through the stars, carried not only its crew but the legacy of an entire species. The battle zone, once feared and untouchable, had been transformed by their actions. Lives had been saved, enemy forces disrupted, and the galaxy had witnessed humanity's potential. The Eclipse Vanguard had not simply survived, it had changed the story of humanity itself. As the ship disappeared into the vastness of